Welcome again this evening to Spark After Dark. We are doing tonight a really important conversation about reproductive justice in the state of our movement and the state of our work. Where we be at and who we be with is all at stake. And so we're excited to be in conversation with some incredible leaders. The Black Sanctuary space is a space, a respite for all of you tonight to mingle, mix, relax, get some massages, make you some blends, turn up with DJ Dimebag, and to see some of the most beautiful and brilliant, and to witness some of the most beautiful and brilliant minds of our movement and our generation tonight. I have the opportunity to introduce Dr. Crystal Redmond.
Thank you.
I've had the pleasure to share space with Dr. Redmond for about 6 years plus in this work, but it really wasn't until this week and this moment that I realized how big of a baddie you are.
Come on now.
Give it up. I mean, you gotta give it up for the outfit, right?
Yes, not for the outfit.
Yes. She's an incredible organizer that has been in this work for almost 20 years. She also is just really proud to have built a movement, an organization, and a team that has been able to serve and protect Black and trans women, femmes, and all of the folks that we love and are connected to each day. Please just again give a warm welcome to Dr. Crystal Redmond.
Thank you.
And you all have a beautiful conversation and
you.
evening tonight.
Thank you, Tony Michelle. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm KR, yes, Dr. Crystal Redmond, formally, but I'm KR, and I'm just so filled with gratitude and just the privilege to be here and hold space, not just this evening, but for this entire weekend, and the intention of our team over the last year of cultivating such a space. And even before we get into the podcast, and we'll formally introduce the space officially tomorrow on our first full conference day. But, Spark, we're a small team. We started off a few years ago with 5 folks, and now we have 10 folks, and we put on a national conference. And to me, that means so much. And it's not just a space where we're just checking off some boxes of what we need to offer, but truly being purposefully and intentionally about this space we want to cultivate for us just to be in. And hopefully we gain some things, but our intention is just pure love and joy, and just this is how we do the work towards liberation. So I hope that you all not just are sitting in that just kismet of love, and also I hope that you all leave with that, just knowing that you're in community, we're in community. So that wasn't on the cards, but I'm going to begin our podcast. So thank you for being here. Welcome to Justice Now. Hopefully you all attended our pre-conference days. Hopefully you all attended the pre-conference. We had 3 amazing pre-conference sessions. So this kind of rounds out our first pre-conference day with the Black Sanctuary and our live podcast of Spark Off. So I have the honor of introducing our 2 special guests with us tonight. I'm going to first introduce Erica Hart, she, they, and then also Raquel Willis. And both of these inspiring activists and advocates have been paving the way to Black, queer, and trans liberation. And we're just so honored to have them. So as I introduce them into this space, if you all can just help me in making sure that they feel welcomed and warmed here. So if you two would like to just join me on stage, and then I can formally give your bios. Yes. Hi, come on. Yes. So also give it up for the outfits. Okay, yes, the coordination. So Erica Hart, she, they, is a Black queer femme activist, writer, highly acclaimed speaker, and award-winning sexuality educator with a Master's of Education in Human Sexuality from Widener University, thank you. Erica's work broke ground when she went topless, showing her double mastectomy scars in public in 2016. Thank you. Since then, she has been in demand at colleges and universities across the country, featured in countless digital and print publications like Vogue. Okay, wait a minute. Right, Washington Post, Allure, as many, there's like 15 here, okay?
You don't have to read them all.
There's a lot. Glamour, Elle, Essence, Cosmopolitan, and et cetera, et cetera. Erica's voice is rooted in leading-edge thought around human sexual expression as inextricable to overall human health and its intersections with race, gender, chronic illness, and disability. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you.
And introducing our second guest here, Raquel Willis, she, her, is an award-winning activist, journalist, and media strategist dedicated to collective liberation, especially for trans Black folks. She is a co-founder of Gender Liberation Movement and an executive producer with iHeartMedia's first ever LGBTQ+ podcast network, Outspoken. Raquel hosts two podcast series, Afterlives and Queer Chronicles. She is also the author of The Risk It Takes to Bloom on Life and Liberation. Woo! And also, this is not on the cards, but tell us about that march real quick, because that just happened.
It did just happen.
Yes.
Hey, y'all. So we had our first ever Gender Liberation March in Washington, D.C. In September, and it was just a powerful, phenomenal day. We really have been obsessed with trying to get folks to think about reproductive justice and the fight for that and the access to abortion care in the same ways that we should be talking about gender-affirming care, because we really believe that we're all fighting for bodily autonomy, we're all fighting for self-determination, and we really got to come together, as we see with these electoral results. So it was a beautiful day. I mean, we had folks come out from like 15 cities. There were like buses from 15 cities. We had folks from Atlanta, my Solutions Not Punishments collaborative fam came out. So many others. So it was a great day.
Yes, absolutely. And that wasn't on the cards, but I wanted to name that there.
You just threw me out there.
I did. I did, because it was so beautiful. And I also want to wrap up by saying for this segment that she co-founded the Transgender Week of Visibility and Action with civil rights attorney Chase Strangio. And she is the president of the Solutions Not Punishment Collaborative Executive Board and serves on the Leslie Lohman Museum of Art Board. Yeah. So.
Period.
Yes. Didn't want to leave out all of the beautiful magic you two hold. So officially welcome, both of you all, and thank you for being here in Atlanta, Georgia, and what it took for you all to be here, just to be in space with us and hold this very powerful and magical conversation. So y'all ready? You wanna?
Let's do it.
Y'all ready?
Let's do it.
Y'all ready? Let's do it. All right, let's do it. So we're gonna start off by talking about power. Power, just that, right? And the first thought and question is, how can Black, queer, trans, and gender expansive folks harness and shift power within our communities and just the broader community? Not talking about white folks, but like broader community within movement space. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I guess I'm being thrown out there again. Well, first off, I mean, I can't think about power without thinking about the South. I'm from here. I'm from Augusta, Georgia. And I feel like Atlanta really radicalized me. I just met so many powerful folks who taught me so much about decarceration, so much about disability justice, reproductive justice. I mean, literally everything I learned here in Atlanta. And when I think about our power, particularly as Black, queer, and trans people, there's something about truth, right? Like, there's something about us having to navigate the world and figure out our truths and then tell the world about themselves, right? We really just don't have a choice. And so I found actually that Black, queer, and trans folks are the ones who are best equipped to articulate white supremacy, articulate the cis heteropatriarchy, articulate the failures of capitalism and so many other systems of oppression. And so when I think about power, there's something about that truth, and we encourage other folks who may not be blessed to have our experiences to interrogate the truths that we're told about the world that aren't actually true.
That's right.
Yes. And I think that, like you said, the power is already there. And I think you already talked about the elephant in the room, this election. I think a lot of these, not to just break the fourth wall really quickly, but a lot of these questions were created before the election result. So I think, too, that there needs to be a reminder that Black, queer, and trans people already have that power, right? That just by truly just existing, that's already there. But there's so many, I would say, mundane examples of trying to convince us that we don't have that power.
That's right.
And I think with the racial reckoning of 2020, I say that in major quotes, racial reckoning of 2020, but also more trans visibility, I feel like right now, white people are having a major temper tantrum about it, and they are, causing a lot of strife and creating a lot of propaganda to convince us that we are wrong. Like something as mundane as like clean girl aesthetic, or what is it, like
the
old
trad
money
wives
style,
and-
the trad wives, right? Like all of that being very, very popular and gaining a lot of traction on places like social media. Like that, a lot of times when I talk to people about this, they're like, well, I don't care about that. But the gag is they do, right?
Yeah.
Nara Smith has 10.9 million followers, okay? Like they're making it very clear who they're trying to pedestalize, right? And, Nara Smith is a light-skinned, thin, cisgender, heterosexual person whose partner likely voted for Trump, right? And again, like these are the people that are being pedestalized to essentially convince us to go away, right? I think that the messaging is very sinister. So I think staying connected to that we are the truth, right? And in a world that is resisting the truth, even with anti-woke propaganda, right? That is a resistance to the truth. That's a resistance to reality. I think we have to stay the course and stay the course, right? And keep disrupting shit.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. That's good. That's good. That's really good. And also, like, as you both said, power didn't just like start and stop because of like politics or this electoral system, right? Like, first off, the system functioned the way it was designed to. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. And power has always been like built in our communities, collective power, the way we support each other, the way we love each other. That's all power. And you're very right. The way culture and white supremacy and capitalism teaches folks that, oh, no, you don't have power because these systems aren't in place, or this piece of legislation did not pass or whatnot. And our power is so not connected to that, right? It's all about what we're even doing here today, the way we gather, the way we love each other, the way we celebrate our stories and our experiences. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I want to bring us into a conversation about intersectionality and how it intersects with just action in our community. So how does the intersection of race, gender, and sexuality shape the experiences of Black, queer, trans, and gender expansive folks in the fight for liberation?
You could take it away.
Me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're
Baby,
there,
you got all these certifications and your degrees.
I mean,
I'm
you're
like,
on all the boards.
Give me a break.
You're on,
No.
and you have a book. You finished your book. I'm still struggling.
Lord. So that's a big question, and it's interesting because, like, when I hear the word intersectionality, it's like a trigger for me at this point because I feel like so many other things, it's been ripped out of our hands.
Yeah.
Or at least they've tried to rip it out of our hands. It's still ours. We still claim it. But I've been thinking more about this kind of idea of like Black, queer, and trans folks seeing the world maybe in more colors than the average person, and seeing the world, like, I've been using this term prismatic, in a prismatic sense. Because we just kind of, again, it goes back to truth. We just kind of see the bullshit, right? We are told that, we picked up something along the way, right, that made us the way that we are, right? There's so many messages about us being inorganic. And actually, it's the other people that are so beholden to these roles, right? And these norms and these labels and these titles and trying to signal to each other that they're normal, and it's like, no, we're all fucking unruly. And that's a beautiful thing. And so when I think about the connection between race and gender and what we see, again, I think we remind folks, like, we're unruly, and that's actually a superpower. Like, that's actually a good thing. I think the other thing I would say is that I'm interested, I think there's like a project of queerness and a project of like gender nonconformity. And I'm more invested in the ways that we can continue to expand how we think about these things. So like, I actually, going back to the election, as much as I want to rag on white people all day, and I still will, and I want to rag on cis people and straight people all day, and I still will, what we're learning is that actually it's not as effective, right? Because a lot of times we continue to kind of position this binary of privilege and oppression, which, if you've been paying attention, particularly in the last year, thinking about our complicity in the genocide, for instance, of Palestinians, right? Or the genocide of Lebanese folks, or the genocide of Congolese folks, right? Are you getting that new iPhone? I don't know, right? But like, we've been kind of moving with this idea, and I don't want to put this on everyone, but I know, I'll be honest and vulnerable. I'm like, I'm Black. What the fuck else do I owe anybody else, right? Like, that is a real kind of feeling, a visceral feeling that I think a lot of us have felt for a long time. And I think part of our charge and our mandate is to figure out how to own that hurt, own that sense of, I guess, entitlement around discussing our suffering, and know that we can also be complicit in other people's suffering, right? So it's really about complicating how we talk about these things and being uncomfortable with ourselves. We've made them uncomfortable, and we'll continue to do that, but how are we going to make ourselves uncomfortable too?
Yeah, that's good. That's so good.
I think too that like you said, there's been a whitewashing of the term intersectionality, and I think with that has come people just thinking that identities are sufficient. They don't have to follow a politic. So people will say, well, I really wanted Harris to win, right? And the question is, why, right? What was her politic, right? Like, did she actually care about Black communities, right? She made it very clear that she didn't care about Palestine, right? She continued to make money off the suffering of Palestinian people. So here is a person at the intersection of Blackness and a woman, a cisgender woman, Okay, and that didn't.
It's not enough.
You still you want to use your intersections to elevate yourself to a position of power.
Right.
And I think that's where what you're talking about, like, how do we participate and be complicit, right? And I think was a lot of people's upset around her not winning, right? Because then there was a loss around being complacent.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, if we don't have a Democratic, president, then of this imperial police state, then I guess I can't, just relax and keep going. I can ignore.
Brunch.
Right? So I think there is a lot, like you said, there's a lot of, I don't know if it's passive or intentional, or I don't have access to many intersections, right? I don't think we talk about class enough in our conversations. I don't think we make spaces accessible to even address class, right? I think class may be a conversation that we have academically, but not actually what is happening, right? And I think for people who do this work, especially around reproductive justice, racial and social justice, gender liberation work, a lot of us have lost a lot of money in the past 4 years or so, right? Or haven't made any money because there hasn't been any regard for this work, right? There's a conversation there that I don't think a lot of people are comfortable having because there's a lot of secrecy around what people have and what they don't have. And also our spaces too, like the hotel, no shade, this is not a call out, this is a call in, a call under, around, over, whatever. The hotel where, I don't know what you're saying, but the hotel where I'm staying, is the entrance is steps. There's no entrance to wheel anything in, right? And even when I got there, the person watched me pull my suitcase up the steps. And I just think about, like, why was this created this way? Like, there's no consideration of folks who are differently abled, right? And two, I mean, I love a conference. I am an academic. You say all the letters and things like that. I love that. But there is a further erasure of folks who are neurodivergent and who don't necessarily are really pushed out of academic spaces. So yeah, intersections are cool. Intersectionality is cool. But what are we really talking about? Yeah, that's right. Good. Are we really just talking about it's just identity shit without the politic?
Yeah.
That's good.
Well.
That was so good for both. And what you said about understanding, like, what our politic is. And despite identity, like, where do you sit and exist in the world? Beyond movement, like, where do you, what are your values and such, beyond a legislature, beyond any, what we're facing, systemic oppressions, or what have you. What are your politics? And we often talk about, like, what are the politics of particular movements or organizations or what have you, but what about the individual? Like, where do we not just show up, but, like, what are the things that are meaningful to us? And, like, how do we kind of, not how do we, but when do we kind of, like, teeter between, like, choosing something that is harm reduction versus like truly something that is for liberation and freedom? And, like, how do we even navigate that as we're all navigating, like, these multiple complexes and trying to literally survive in the systems that exist, So, like, that constant challenge of, like, how are we not just showing up and trying to get the things we need, but also that our communities need, and knowing that we're all a part of communities. So, like, what are we doing? So, that's so good. And also, I'll say, like, for sure, right, a conference space is something that isolates folks and separates folks, especially because most conferences are hosted by, like, large mega nonprofits that have, like, infinite budgets and sponsor. Well, we do have a few sponsors, but
not all conferences.
Our community org sponsors. We have 3. I'm all If, When, How, Black Feminist Future, and Collective Rising. So, all RJ orgs. And also, like, that was one of the reasons why Spark decided to really design or create a space like this, because we are a small grassroots org in Atlanta. We have, like, this year's the first year we had 10 staff with benefits and paid and this and that, you know, and stuff, where we're able to be like, you know, we need to actually create a space that is for our communities, because if we don't create this space, then like we're trying to like figure out when we can access this and how we can access this. So no, that's super important, that a lot of these spaces, a lot of these conversations are super siloed, because who are these spaces designed for? Like who are we, what is the intention here, and who do we want in this space, regardless of what we put in the program? So I want to bring us into a conversation more deeper about just what we're here for this weekend around queering RJ and our journey towards liberation. So ultimately, how are we centering Black, queer, transgender, expansive folks in our experiences and how they reshape reproductive justice, or expand, rather, reproductive justice?
I mean, there is no reproductive justice without Black trans people. You know, Black, cis, and trans people sat around a room and came up with the framework for reproductive justice. It's already been said, Raquel said, like, this is essentially about autonomy, right? And reclaiming autonomy. So in a conversation around autonomy in a transphobic world, right? Reproductive justice is not just about having kids or not having kids, right? It's also about living in a world that is actually affirming and safe for everybody, right? Not just for the kid that you potentially may make, right? But for everyone. And I think that inherently includes trans people. And I think oftentimes it is a disservice that we are not included. And I feel like a broken record constantly talking about queer, trans, non-binary people having abortions, because a lot of the discourse around abortions is incredibly centered around cisgender women. And I think that that excludes so many people that need access to abortion care, right? And I love the connection to gender affirming care being very similar to, and also inside of reproductive justice. And I don't think that we talk about that enough. So there's no separation, and I think the separation is just inside of further erasure and transphobia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes, definitely want to co-sign you and, you know, think about reproductive justice as something produced out of Black brilliance, right? Produced out of Black, queer, trans brilliance, produced out of Black woman brilliance, right? And thinking about the Black Southern brilliance that also produced it, right? So shout out to Loretta Ross and all who have innovated the concept of RJ. Shout out to Sister Song. And so many other organizations that have been a part of that ecosystem that are in the room, you know? And it's, you know, it's interesting because I'm thinking about the gender affirming care piece a little more right now. And, you know, there's going to be this case going to the Supreme Court on December 4th, U.S. v. Skermeti, and it's about a family of a young trans teen from Tennessee. So it's a case from the South, and essentially it's going to have impacts on access to gender affirming care for folks under the age of 18. But we know with the incoming administration, they're going to try and expand whatever the decision is to impact folks' access to gender affirming care regardless of age. And I just think about how cis people access gender affirming care. We just don't call it that. You know, everything from, you know, hormone replacement therapy, which is not an exclusively trans or non-binary thing, right? Thinking about, you know, folks who may have PCOS, right? They may have to access what would be considered gender affirming care for a trans person, right? If they're cis. So I think about that, right? I think about the cis men who can get access to testosterone to affirm their masculinity. That's gender affirming care, right? So I mean, I think about all of those things, and actually if you add all of that up, cisgender folks actually consume or partake in gender affirming care more than trans folks do, inevitably. So it's all connected. And that's the message that we have to get the folks outside of this room to understand. Is like, it's not actually just about us as trans folks, it's actually about you too, right? So when you deny us care, you're on the road to eventually denying yourself care. And it sucks that people have to think that way, that, you know, for a lot of folks, there may be not enough empathy, or for whatever reason, they are ignorant to the existence of trans folks. I'm trying to give folks more grace, right? First of all, it's a lie.
Don't give
These
them any
motherfuckers,
grace.
I know the stat is like,
No grace, no grace.
you know, only 30% of folks say they know a trans person, but that say is doing a lot of work.
It's doing a lot of work.
It's doing a lot of work.
I have a black friend.
Right, basically. One day they're gonna use us that
They
way.
are.
It's
They
just
already
it's
are.
not in yet. But we have always existed, right? We may not have used the same labels or moved through the world or navigated or been above ground in the ways that we are, but we've always been here.
Yeah.
And so again, going back to the truth piece,
Yes.
that's a part of our power, is that we force people to reckon with the truth.
Yes.
So anyway, I think it's all connected, and I think we've got to continue to get folks to understand that actually this is just as much my care as it is yours.
Yes.
That's right.
Can I add to this too?
Please, yeah.
As a non-binary consensual parent for the first time, I've parented lots of people non-consensually, my siblings, exes, and this is the first time I'm a consensual parent. I think that needs to be said.
That's good. Did you coin that?
I'm coining it now.
Period.
I don't
That's a
think
good
that I
one.
can take. I don't think it's mine, but sure. What is ownership? Like we can talk about that too. Like let's not. What is ownership? But as a sex educator, right, for like 13 years, a big part of my training in the beginning was teen pregnancy prevention. So when I went to start looking at trying to get pregnant, I wasn't a teen, but I was older, right? I was like, I don't know how old was I was trying to get pregnant. How old am I now? It doesn't matter. Older than a teen. I didn't know. I didn't know what would be required with intrauterine insemination. I didn't know what would be required with in vitro fertilization, right? There wasn't, even in my grad school program, there was maybe one class on pregnancy, and it didn't include IUIs, IVF, right? Everybody, my desire to get pregnant, or how I envisioned that, was from the L word, when Bet and Tina had like candles around and a turkey baster. I thought, like, I could make that happen. Like, that's what I want to happen. And when I did eventually do IUI, I had to do it with a midwife. So there's a white woman in my bedroom with my partner who's holding sperm, like warming it up, because when you get it, you gotta warm it up, right? You warm it up, and then their 3-year-old was in the corner on a phone because she didn't have childcare. So, okay, there's not the candles.
Right.
It's not darkness. It's not sexy music, right? I'm not getting anything I want, and there's no conversation about that. It's not a lot of conversation around, it's not going to happen the first time you find sperm. It's also really hard to find black sperm, right? Like these conversations are reproductive justice conversations, right? It should not be a mystery how we get to expand our families on our terms, right? And it was a mystery for me, and I don't want it to be a mystery for anybody else. So I think it must be included.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Love that. And so I'm hearing truth. I'm hearing storytelling. And when I think about how we move power and build power and broaden the movement, we always talk about storytelling, and our stories are the truth, right? That's our qualitative data. That's how we gather information and distribute information. So this may not be on the cards, but I'm just thinking, how else can folks who are listening in and folks in our community truly take their experiences, their lived experiences, and truly move in this movement or in multiple movements? How can we take our experiences and really bring that to action and build power?
Something about stories, and I don't know, maybe it's because of, this visibility era that we're on the waning tail of, particularly as trans and non-binary folks, or because of social media, right? And, almost anybody can be visible or go viral in some way.
Yes.
I just think about the culture that we have now of, just giving our story out, right? In whatever ways, right? Like people giving all their trauma out to the internet, hoping, I don't know, maybe they'll get some validation that will fill the void. It doesn't, I promise you. But I think we've become too loose with our stories. Like, we need to be able to curate what we share with the world and what we hold for ourselves. And maybe you don't hold it forever, but you deserve to hold pieces of your story to yourself, right? And so I think before you utilize your story or call yourself utilizing your story, which I do believe is one of the simplest organizing tools that we all have, you have to dig into that story for yourself and find meaning of it for yourself, right? So what are the things of your story that give you strength? What are the things of your story that you need to heal from? Right? Those might be the dynamics you don't share with the world, right? When I think about the process of writing my memoir, it was like, I knew over the years, like the things I was saving, I was like, it's gonna be in this package. But, I think during the process, what I also learned, because I had more of a platform, was like, me just telling my story actually could do harm to folks, or it could catch folks off guard, even though it's my story to tell. And I felt a duty to go to all of my family and be like, hey, I'm gonna be talking about some of this stuff. And there was a lot of things I didn't realize, I still needed to process with my family, right? Moments where I felt betrayed, moments where I felt neglected, moments where I felt hurt, that they didn't even realize that was how I viewed those stories. But because I was able to move through the discomfort privately first, it made the release of it so much more healing and transformative. And they were able to fully show up and be like, well, we know all this in it, so I'm not being caught off guard. And now it can really be somewhat of a gift or support to other folks out there. So there was work that I needed to do before I shared my story on that level. And I don't know that folks who, maybe haven't been visible on a certain level or had, a following or a platform on a certain level, or had a background in media or journalism, or been an educator, right? Know how much work should go into, how much due diligence they should have, so how much intentionality they should put forth around the stories that they share.
That's right.
You're not saying nothing but a word. Oh, Lord. I'm just thinking about how my partner's mom used to say to us a lot, why do you always have so many people in your house? And we would just be like, we're people. Like, we like to have people, we like to host. Like, we like to have people over. And a lot of those people who used to always be in my house, we are no longer friends. Because they thought that they could always have access to me. And let me tell you, when you have a child, okay, access looks different. And people have a hard time being with that shift who've always felt like you're their property, right? And they always get to have access to you. So this being intentional about your story and being intentional about who you allow into your space, because that's essentially what it is. Even when we are scrolling on, you're doom scrolling, right? That's so much spiritual intel that we are taking in, all of the moods, all of the struggles, things that people are experiencing, right? There's not a lot of consideration of our own nervous systems, and especially in organizing space. A lot of it is just, I'm just gonna give, and I'm just gonna give, and I'm just gonna give, and
Yeah.
oh my God, yes, y'all can come over, even though I'm exhausted and I don't feel like having nobody over, but y'all can come over, it's fine, and I'm gonna sit up with y'all until 1 in the morning, even though I really wanted to go to bed at 9, right? Or watch silly ass Love Island until 3 in the morning. Like, I didn't want to be bothered, but here you are in my space.
Yeah.
And it does, like, without being intentional about who you are, right? And the value that you have, it does accelerate the burnout. It does. It does. So I really love that you said that. And I think in Erica 3 years ago would have been like, oh, Raquel, please, I'm gonna just, it's fine. I'll just
Right.
I'm just gonna let everybody know all my business. This is
Yeah.
fine. And it is important to be intentional. I thank you for sharing that.
That's good. And I feel like some of the things that at least I'm taking away from some of this is like, you can absolutely build power and take action by protecting your emotional and psychological safety. Like, that is a radical form of liberation too as well. Like, how do we safeguard our emotional and psychological safety too? I am going to round us out just a little bit so we can open it up to any questions we have from folks that are in the room. But prior to opening it up, I want to talk a little bit about our vision for liberation. So what does a liberated future look like for us?
Pro-slut, pro-queer, pro-sex work, and not just like, pro feels like a political stance. Like, it feels very much like, well, I'm saying that like everywhere in the world, right? Like, this is what we see. It's not unusual. We are not being studied in schools, but we are actually leading those conversations and telling the stories on our own time, not, cis professors or white professors telling our experiences or really bottling them up and making them really minuscule and palatable to groups of people, but we are able to have narrative control, right? But that the most marginalized are at the forefront is what I see. And I don't think that that's possible without reparations from the state, from Black people. I don't think that that's talked about enough, but reparations must happen. And they must come from the state. They're not gonna come from the mutual aid organizing that we do on a regular basis. Like, they are due and owed from the state.
That's right.
So that's the future that I see is the bank account full for everybody that looks like me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And even that wouldn't be enough.
It will. Okay. That part. That part. All the white people go away as well. Okay.
When I was thinking about this question, when y'all shared it, I was like, I was just thinking about the babies, like the kids. And I think about this, like, incoming Trump era, and, it was gonna be some shit with Harris, as we already discussed, either way. But I think about how restrictive, how small people are going to become, including the babies. And I think about how small they are now, right? Like, our project are mandated to make their inner universe bigger, right? Not smaller. And I just think about, virtually everyone in this room, we grew up being assigned not just a gender or a sex, but being assigned a future that was clearly too small for most of us in this room. Being assigned interest and, a path, a trajectory. And, even the cis folks, even the white folks, even the straight folks don't actually follow those paths, right? They're meant to be shredded up You know, the scripts are meant to be shredded up, right? But what would it be if we just didn't get a script in the first place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I want for everyone. Because I think so much of our anxieties and fears and hurt, anger, sadness, dissatisfaction, disappointment comes from those expectations that were put on us. And not just by the doctor and the nurses or by our parents or guardians, but by our peers and by society and by the religious institutions we may have been a part of, right? That we also had no choice in most of the time. Our educational system, right? We literally, the work that we do as activists and organizers and thinkers and educators, direct action direct services providers, the folks creating the direct actions, we already have to serve as an antidote to the programming that comes from a fucking broken educational system,
Okay.
Yeah.
a fucking broken healthcare system, a broken financial system for most folks. And I'm just curious about a world where we can just have less scripts,
Yeah.
less boxes, and more freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Very. So I'm going to open it up to our audience, see if there's maybe 2 to 3 questions we have time for, and then we can close out. So if we have, we have one here.
This may be completely off script, but I'm gonna ask it anyway, since we're talking about breaking like societal norms. Can y'all share what it was like to unlearn society's norm of love and the correlation to marriage, specifically that marriage does not validate the relationship, especially for queer folks?
What?
Wow. Well, as somebody who has been married before, happily divorced, very happily divorced. This is such a, I want to just teach a class on this. That's the best way I can answer this. There is so much that white supremacy has taught us about marriage, and that marriage is connected to being civilized, right? And if you are unmarried, then you are uncivilized. So reaching for marriage, which a lot of white cis men did, right, to align themselves back with, white cis gay men did, to align themselves back with white supremacy, is a big reason why so many people were celebrating queer people getting married, right, gay people getting married. Not that that was anything that we asked for, especially Black queer people. I think that it is this institution that is connected to the state, right? I think we have to be mindful of what that means, right? Why is it that I have to go to the state to get married, and I have to go back to the state to get unmarried, and I have to pay money? In New York, I think it was $600 to get unmarried. Like, it's this structure, I think, that keeps us in this cycle of this is what's normal and this is not normal. And I think as queer people, we have to really pull ourselves away from and be mindful that we're not trying to strive for some level of normality, which we will not get in the institution of marriage. Now, I love a wedding, okay? I'm not even gonna hold you. I love a wedding. I think that my partner should propose, right? I still live in this world, right? But I still have my politic. And I think it's important for queer people to have their politic about marriage and not just be googly eyes about it. And then the love piece, I don't even know how to get to that. Like, there is, there is just not enough conversations about love. And I think there's not enough conversations about love because there's not enough conversations about conflict, right? And a lot of our rosy views of love are rooted in this Disney idea that you love each other, you fall in love, you get married, you live forever, right? That forever piece too. And that is just so far from the truth. And so many of us, I hope most of us have read and studied all about love, but so many of us have connected love with abuse as well. And what truly is our view of love if we've put on a hierarchy romantic love, right? There's not a lot of celebration of love between friends or love that, even familial love, I don't think is honored in the same ways that romantic love is honored. And I think we have to be incredibly intentional about that, but then also step into a space of actually resolving conflict. And I don't think that there's enough conversations about that. Right now, what do people do to resolve conflict? Unfollow, okay? I'm not talking to you anymore. Block, right? There's no discourse. I mean, we in organizing spaces talk about restorative justice, but I'm not seeing that a lot, right? I'm not seeing friends of friends come and talk to people and say, hey, what happened? Let's have a conversation. Let's chat it out. That's love. Right? That's actually love, like actually having hard conversations, what we say all the time, that's challenging, right? To actually talk about something that was a disruption to a relationship, and it's inevitable that you're gonna have conflict, right? And I think there's so much resistance to conflict, and conflict is related to as the adverse of love, but it truly is, it means that I love you, right? That I'm willing to be in conflict with you, that I'm willing to work it out, that I'm willing to deal with the hard shit, right? Not just the fluffy, lewd nastiness all over the world. You know what I mean? I'm doing too much. Okay?
No, that was
It's
great.
after dark. It's after dark.
That was
after
doing
dark.
something for me.
Does that answer the question? It's such a good question, and it's so big. Yeah, we got a lot of work to do. But we're being convinced to get married again too, right? That is in the media everywhere, right? It's a lot of marriage propaganda. And I think we have to, again, stay the course and not fall for the nonsense.
Yeah, that's good. Would you like
I
to?
feel like I really don't have anything to add to that. That was great. Yeah, I don't know what I would add. I feel like I could just, I wish I could just I wish I could bring one of the many conversations that Tony, Michelle, and I often have about dating, because we are in the prison of being attracted to cis men. More often than not, but which is its
Abolition
own thing.
now.
It's its own thing. It's a curse. But I think to be real and to be vulnerable, I think most of my 20s and even many days now, I don't feel like marriage is accessible to me, right? It just doesn't really feel like an option. And I think it takes a lot obviously it takes a lot to love a Black woman. Obviously it takes a lot to love a Black queer woman, right? And it takes an almost unintelligible amount of a lot to love a Black trans woman.
Yes.
And we don't have enough models of what that looks like.
Yes.
Out in the light, out in the daylight. And not just for us as Black trans women, but I think for the people who want to be our lovers and our boos and whoever else, right?
Yeah.
There isn't enough.
Yeah.
And so I'm often thinking about, I don't know, something in Venus must be going on, because I don't know, the men been on my phone, honey. I don't know if they feel guilty about Trump or what, but how are you?
Yes.
But
Tell us more.
but not Trump supporters, no.
No. We're clear. We're clear.
Yeah, no. They're the woke ones, but as woke as they can be, I guess. But I guess what I was gonna say is that there's so much that I think about in terms of just like what's coming with this incoming administration. And I think about the like scarlet letter that I have on my chest, the target on my back as a visible Black trans woman.
Yes.
And that requires a partner who is strong, honey, maybe stronger than me.
Yeah.
To like roll with me through that.
Yes.
But then I also just think about, one of my lifelong dreams has been to have children, but what does that mean to potentially put that target on them and they not have a choice in that? Like that is really something I've been grappling a lot with now in my 30s. And I don't know what that answer is, right? I don't know if I can, as awkward as it sounds, sign somebody up to have to be as brave and indestructible as I have to be, or at least try to be in the world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just to be real.
Yeah.
We can take, yes, maybe one or two more depending on the question, the length of the question, rather.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
I have a question because when I came here, I was like, oh, this is after dark. And then the panel started, and then I was like, oh, this is not about after dark, but that's okay. It's about so many things that were so lovely to hear.
Expansive.
Take it. Let's get after dark. I feel like we're about to take it there.
I kind of want to ask y'all a question related to after dark that doesn't feel like you have to go anywhere, that you don't want to go with this crowd, but like, yeah, because I'm like after dark can like, infer like or mean something.
Yeah.
But I want to know about the ways that in your body you find pleasure, and that can really be answered in a magnitude of ways. But I'm really just interested in how pleasure shows up. And that's it.
After dark.
After dark. Okay, I know.
I was gonna go intellectual, but after dark.
After dark. Pleasure. I don't know why this is coming up for me, but I was like, I don't know, I was like walking out of the bougie hotel. Talking about. And this guy like was like wild over the fragrance I was wearing.
What is
Right.
it? Yeah. Yes.
It's new because I left my actual like go-to fragrance at home, and I was like, oh shoot, I gotta find some at the airport because I can't be walking around raw dogging life without a scent. It's not in the Southern
Not
way,
raw dog.
but it's Joe Malone. It's like
Oh, love Joe Malone. Sweet pea.
no, this is like in this like smoky looking
Oh.
bottle. I can't remember y'all, I just threw it on because it smelled good, but maybe I'll post about it. But it's Joe Malone though. Anyway, but that was just such a moment of like, like pleasure. There was just something about like, yeah, I know I look cute, but the fact that, it was the scent that grabbed, and I really think scent is a thing that gives me pleasure, like good scents. Stuff like that. But, I think in terms of intimacy, I appreciate when someone understands how fucking awkward it is, just like the bare facts of intimacy and what that is, and like we can break the ice and it can be like goofy at first and then chill. I think my sister also feels that way too, but I'm not gonna put her info out here. But just like making it easier and simple, and like, yes, it can be awkward, but like just like owning that and getting through it. Truth, right? Like, let's just own the truth of it.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think being grown, like, we can have some performance, but I don't want it to all be performance, right?
Okay.
Like, I don't want to have to fit your like role of femininity. And I think that that's something that I felt a lot more when I was younger, right? Like, there was a certain role I felt like I had to embody to get pleasure.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And I think the thing about maturing is realizing that I don't. Like, if I want to do that,
Yes.
that's a certain thing. But
Yes.
but I deserve the opportunity to not want to have to
Yes.
play that role
Yes.
or play a role.
Yes.
So I love that. But I was talking about cis men earlier. Hands down, queer and trans people are the best in terms of sexual intimacy.
100%.
Like, that, hands down. I mean, I don't
100%.
even actually have to say that, but like, that's
Just
true.
for the record.
Just for the record.
For the record. I was like, what? Cuckold? I don't know. Like, no, but lately I have been kind of into that. Like, just, I have been. Not in the ways that I feel like cuckold is like downgraded, but I think it could be really, really hot. Like, what is cuckold beyond voyeurism? Like, and then joining. Like, I don't know why it has a new name. I feel like pornography is doing something weird. I'm a big voyeur, so that makes me feel aroused. Like, to watch, to be watched, I think is really hot.
See, I'm too possessive, so I think I would like to be the one being watched.
Oh, but I get off on my possessiveness a little bit because I'm like, oh, bring it back.
Okay.
Like, relax. Like, so I think I'm trying to dom myself.
Yeah.
I'm doming myself in the midst of witnessing. And then I also, I can't believe I'm going to say this. One of my friends was like, I think that you should have, we said after dark.
Come on.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just making sure.
You have consent.
One of my friends was like, I think a train, like a head train, should be run on you. Like, as a postpartum gift. And I was like, hey.
Wow.
I love that. I think that's the most giving gift, right?
You can give.
If I don't have to engage and I can just be the pillow princess that I am, sure.
Right.
Like, I love that. Like, in and out, revolving door. Like, let's go.
Right. Taking notes.
Wow.
Right.
But yes, also since.
I feel like you're innovating a lot in this conversation.
I'm a sex educator, so
Yeah,
you said
that's
after
it.
dark.
This is your bag.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Sunlight. I get aroused by sunlight.
Right.
I'm serious. Like, I love a little vitamin D. I'm a Northeast girly. When I go to California, it's arousing to me that the sun, how much sun is out.
Yeah.
I was at a coffee shop today that had these huge windows, and I just sat in the sun. That is incredible to me.
But the Georgia sun.
The Georgia sun. Yes, the
'Cause
South.
I don't want to give California too much. but,
Okay,
like,
not too much. Yeah.
Wait a minute now.
it's just something about like here and especially when it's humid and the stickiness. Like, I know it can be gross,
Yeah.
but it can also just be a good gross.
Yes.
A good nasty.
You're right. Like the sweat.
Sticky.
Yes, you're right. And I was sweating a little bit, and I stayed there. I stayed there. Yeah. I love that question. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking of all the things. One more. Okay.
Here we go.
That was a real
Hi.
friend. Shout out to your friend. That was a very good friend.
Right? I'm like, why did you make that happen?
Right.
Hey y'all, thank
Hi.
you for all of this deliciousness. I've been really, I see you both as storytellers. I know that, Erica, you're working on a book. Raquel, you wrote a hell of a book. And I noticed a lot of the folks who at one point were organizing and mobilizing in a maybe a more direct action way are shifting to storytelling and thinking about like the somatic impact of what is coming for us and what's up ahead. I'm curious about how you all see creativity, storytelling, and other uses of the erotic, as Audrey would call them, for how you do your work, in a pleasureful way. I'll share to that, and also like just like in service to like the shit that we've been talking about, like how do niggas use the creative as not a de-radicalized position, but as shit that's central to what we got to do.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm thinking.
I mean, I always think about that Tony K. Bambara quote, right? Like, we all know it. The role of the it's cultural worker, actually. I think we often say artist. But cultural worker is to make the revolution irresistible.
Yes.
And I think that that's some real shit, you know? Like, I think to your point, especially I think in some of the earlier years, particularly of the movement for Black Lives, I don't think the storytelling piece, the cultural or creative production piece or the artistic piece was taken seriously enough, right? and I don't think that was intentional. I think as a generation, we had to figure out the menu of options for us to make the revolution irresistible. And I think because we saw some successes, particularly through direct action, that just became the dominant frame. So we have to give ourselves grace, right? So I actually, and to be honest, when I started seeing the flip, I think that you're talking about where folks were getting into their creative or artistic bag, you know how it is, like your knee-jerk reaction is like, they ain't never said nothing about that. Like, or a sense of envy. Like, oh, you've gotten off of this hamster wheel that I feel like I still have to be on. And I don't think that we have to feel that way. Like, I think we can actually just see that as like a reflection of what we could do, right? If we gave ourselves permission to do it. And so I think the writing and the art making and even, the filmmaking or whatever, right, can be revolutionary. When our people do it, when the revolutionaries do it, it's revolutionary. So what do we use as inspiration in the streets, right? We use chants, we use words, we use language, we use stories, we use songs. Y'all use song, I can't sing. But, we use that stuff. We quote Audrey, we quote James, we quote Marsha and so many other folks, Sylvia, Miss Major, right? So I dare anybody to be like, those folks aren't revolutionary, right? So I'm all over the place right now, but I think that we have to give ourselves permission to name and claim the work that we're doing in that revolutionary lineage, because the lineage is there.
That's good.
And I think too how magical it is to take nothing and then create something, right? Like writing, I don't know how it felt for you, but I clap it up for anybody that has completed a book, because it is excruciating, in my opinion, to write. Especially a memoir, right? Or anything of cultural like acknowledgement or a cultural critique, right? That is a lot. It takes a lot. Like I think I was reading about an author that removes everything, removes the internet, removes apps, puts her phone in a cabinet, like just so she can put words to paper, right? So like clearing your brain from all distraction. I think we truly have to honor the work of, cultural workers, the work of the artist. And I think, like you said, I think there's a lot of envy and there's a lot of like degrading or like a way to be like, it's not as important, right? I'll go see it at the museum, but I'm gonna, the protest is more important. And for some reason, I feel like this is also ableist as well, because everybody cannot be in the streets. Everybody's activism does not look that way, and I think there is so much pressure for activism to look one way. And I think we do have to get expansive, we do have to get big, and we do have to name the artists who really have us consider another world and have us consider Black futures and have us consider abolition and so on and so forth. Like, I think it's such a beautiful question. I think artists are oftentimes, it's a different conference, right? We'll talk about them at another time, right? Instead of it being right here in the room.
Integral, I want to add something because you made me think of it. And this was something I was saying in my speech at the Gender Liberation March in September. But I was just, thinking about, being Black and queer and trans, and I think also being in my 30s and again, thinking about legacy. So to go back to the children piece and like all of that. But also just thinking about, there are so many folks in our community who won't have children, biological, won't adopt anybody, right? Maybe don't have that kind of chosen child experience. But one of the things I was saying is like, regardless, we bear fruit. Regardless of what our bodies can or cannot do, we bear fruit. And so I was talking about how, Crystal LaBeija bore the fruit of ballroom culture, right? I think about Marsha and how much how many fruits she bore for all of us, right? Someone who, had been incarcerated at points, dealt with mental health, dealt with addiction, was houseless for most of her life, discarded by so many movements, and how many seeds she sprouted for us to gather like this and speak like this and be this unapologetic. So that part, that we do bear fruit in so many ways. And even the protest, even being out in the streets is a creative action, right? And we can own that too, right? Because those things come up out of nothing.
I don't want to end this conversation. It's so good. And I feel like if we keep going after dark, it's going to get real dark. So I feel like this evening, we, spoke about power and action, love. We spoke about pleasure. We spoke about just the beautiful pieces of how we build power, including how we bring our art into culture change, culture shift work. Which is so important. And, we had the honor of sitting here and just like hearing the beautiful magic you two bring to the movement and into this space. So if you can leave us with how we can stay connected to both of you, and then we will close out.
Cool. You can stay connected to me via my social media channels. I Heart Erica across all platforms. IHAARTERICKA. Is I spell my, yes, okay. It's late. And my website is the same, ihearterica.com. I am writing a book. It will be out next year. Thank you, because, oh my God, it is so much work. Yeah, that's how you can stay connected to me.
Yeah, and I'm Raquel Willis on all platforms, give or take an underscore, and RaquelWillis.com, but also co-founded Gender Liberation Movement, which produced that march. So check out genderlib.com. We are planning to do some work around the Supreme Court case that I was talking about earlier on December 4th. And also just continue to do more political education, especially thinking about all those anti-trans ads. Like,
Yes.
we got fucking work to do.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my partner and I have a podcast called Hood Rat to Head Rap.
I've listened to the podcast several
you.
times. You know, it's sign in and log in and view it for
Thank
both of
you.
y'all's podcasts.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for holding this space with us. For folks who are newer to Spark, you can follow us at SparkRJ now, and that's the same across all platforms as well. And this podcast will be accessible on all podcast platforms. So thank you again.
Thank you.
For being in this space with us and cultivating this space. And if we can just give snaps, claps, whatever you got to give.
Thank you.
Yes. And if the DJ is in the room, if the DJ can
The
play.
DJ is coming and will be here
Yes.
soon. But y'all, give it up for this entire